Hello you guys, it is your girl Kyra and welcome to my channel Urban Locs, where we discuss all things trust in that process, honey. So in today's video we're actually going to be going over some Thick Loc pros and some Thick Loc cons. If you are new, thank you so much for stopping by. Stay a while. Click subscribe down below. And as always, if you are not new, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all. Now, let's go ahead and hop right into this list. I think we're actually going to start with the pros because why not start on a high note? Because this is a high note, baby. So let's go ahead and start good, and then we'll go ahead with the cons, and then we're going to probably make you feel good back again about the pros, because the pros definitely outweigh the cons, honey. They do. So Thick Loc pro number one is, I feel like, for obvious reasons, and we'll go ahead and start with the originality and the boldness of having thick locks. So, you know, thick locks is not something that's completely unheard of, obviously. If you have thick locks, you just know it's a different type of statement. Whether, you know, some people look at that as negative, especially if you're in corporate America, is already something that's hard to deal with. So I feel like if you have thicker locks, that you may not be having the right eyes on you that you would like, but hey, do you. That's how I feel about it. I want it to be different. I wanted my locks to be different. They're so beautiful. They're so big. They're so beautiful. Like when you have them curled, it's a different type of essence that thick locks have. All locks are beautiful, trust me, they really are. I love them all, but thick locks are much more unique than a regular set of locks. So Thick Loc pro number two is a very, very big one. Very big one, and that is in terms of the foundation that you have for your locks. So your roots, you have thinner locks, you have thinner sections at the roots, you have thinner parts, so breakage can happen a lot easier than it can for somebody that has thick locks. Somebody that has bigger parts, bigger locks, thicker sections, you have a better chance, especially if you are neglectful when it comes to your hair, your lock maintenance and moisturizing, things like that. And that's not to say people with thick locks are lazy, because, you know, we have to moisturize too. But if you really just want to be out here willy-nilly, you know, doing what you're doing, not really paying no attention to your hair, then don't get no thin locks, because you get some thin locks, they're gonna be on the floor. And I'm not trying to be funny, but they're gonna be on the ground, okay? If you do not take care of them, if you're retwisting too much, just doing a whole lot of styling, things like that, all those things can cause thinning, can cause breakage when you have thinner locks. So this next pro actually goes with the previous one, and that is the durability of your lock in general. So not necessarily just your foundation and your roots and, you know, breakage and things up there, but also your locks in general, because you have to realize that even if you have skinny locks, or, you know, you can have thick locks and you can have breakage as well. It's not as common, but your lock does not have to break off at the root, honey. Your lock can be like right down in the middle and be like, all right, peace out. Your thick locks are going to be stronger than thinner locks. So that's that. Next is, you don't really need to say much about this one, but next is retwist time. Obviously, you know, I feel like wash and retwist day comes up too quickly, but I can only imagine if I had to do like 100+ locks. If I even had to do 10 more than what I got to do, I'd be sick. I would be sick. So having thick locks is great because you do not have to worry about your retwist taking 7 hours, unless you just make them take 7 hours, because I know I can procrastinate and I'll be doing too much sometimes when I'm supposed to be retwisting. So retwist time obviously is a huge cut down, and I'll also say if you do actually go to a loctician, that may make a big difference as well, because, you know, if you're adding on time, you're adding on to your service. So it may be a little bit cheaper. If you do have thicker locks, I guess it would depend on where you go, but retwist time, hands down, makes sense. Next. So the last pro that I actually have, you guys, is the separating of your locks that get stuck together, that marry. So if your locks are getting all stuck together and you have 1,000 of them, imagine taking all those apart. Yeah, no thank you. No thank you. No thank you. First of all, you guys, if you go without retwisting, like I have went 2.5 months without retwisting, and when I finally had to take those locks apart, it was so hard, and I was not expecting it to be that bad. But I can only imagine if I had a bunch of little locks all over my head, separating, no. So you guys, overall the whole experience is a pro, but we're gonna end the pros on those notes. Now for the Thick Loc cons. So con number one, I actually haven't experienced with this set quite yet, but I know this ain't going nowhere, and I know this to be very true and very personal. But your locks, when they get wet, baby, they gonna be heavy. They're gonna be real heavy. So obviously it depends on how long your hair is, things like that. But when your locks are dry, like, it does not bother me. But I remember when I used to wash my hair, just how my neck would just be like down. If I picked my locks up and dropped them down, like, my head would really drop. So thick locks, yes, they can be really heavy, like I said, especially the longer they get, but hey, it's not that bad, especially because it only happens when they're wet. So that's something that you can easily look past, and let's go ahead and do that. Look past that. Next, so the next one actually goes hand in hand with that one, and that is your drying time. My hair is always taking a very long time to dry, but just know that having thick locks, obviously it's going to take longer for those locks to dry because they hold more water. And the thing about with locks is you want to make sure that your locks are getting fully dry. That's whether you air dry, whether you blow dry, whatever you want to do, it is completely your preference. I do both, but especially if you have thick locks and they're holding onto all that water, if you do not dry them, your locks can mildew. You know, they can start to smell really bad. So my suggestion is to always start your hair in the beginning of the day, but life does not always work like that. Half the time, I don't even do that. But if you cannot finish your hair, like finish drying it, then I would say you at least want to get a blow dryer on the cool setting and dry it a little bit before you just head to bed. But if you're going to bed and your head is still wet in general, do not cover it up. I always lay out my little satin kimono that I have. If you got satin sheets, satin pillowcases, even better. And I try to sleep on my stomach, which I like doing anyway. It's my preference of sleeping. But do not just be covering your head up. Don't just be throwing your hair into some styles to where it can't dry, because you do not want your locks to mildew. But yes, thick locks do take longer to dry. So the next con is actually styling. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can't do any styles with your thick locks, because obviously that ain't true. Okay, that ain't true. But your hair is not as pliable, flexible, whatever you want to call it, as a thinner lock. So styles are going to be harder. Some things you will not be able to do, and I'll say you won't be able to do them comfortably, at least. And that rolls into another kind of con with having thick locks. Having locks in general, you become more tender-headed because your hair becomes accustomed to not being combed and brushed and tugged at like that. So you're gonna be more tender-headed usually than you would be with loose natural hair. So when you have thick locks and you're tender-headed, it can get real tough sometimes. Sometimes I'll put my hair up in a little raggedy, little loose ponytail, and I'll feel the headache coming on quickly. So styles are not as easy, but styles are not impossible. Just find you some good thick lock styles. There are plenty of them, trust me. So the next con is if you actually plan to color your locks, whether it be dyeing, bleaching, whatever, it can be a little bit harder to make it look not blotchy. You don't want dye to be penetrating all the way into your lock in general. Whenever you're getting your hair dyed or dyeing your locks, the goal is not to get the dye to reach all in your lock. The goal is to coat your locks, okay? It's to coat them with the color. But when you have thicker locks, you know, you have more surface area and things can be a little bit hard. And I know I experienced that with my first set as well. So now the final con is, I'll say in a nutshell, to know your hair type. Know your head of hair. Because if you, so say if you have either really fine hair, say you just don't have a lot of hair, like as far as density, I think that's the right word, in general on your head, like coverage, then if you get thick locks and your hair is not already thick natured, then you may end up with kind of like that scalpy look that I know a lot of people don't like when it comes to their locks. And that's just because, yes, you already have bigger parts, bigger sections, but your locks don't fill up as much. So for example, two people have 50 locks. I have really big, really thick hair. So for me, 50 locks looks great. It looks perfect for me. But if somebody else has really thin hair, they only have 50 locks, their locks still may not be as thick as mine, even though we have the same number. So just know your own head of hair and do whatever size is best for your hair, best for whatever you want to do. But just know that that scalpy look is possible if your hair is not already thick natured. Alright, so now that we went over the Thick Loc pros and cons, let's talk about another issue that happens in the lock community, and that is the lint. Go ahead and click on this video right here on the screen so we can get into some of the lint prevention tips and the solutions if you do deal with that problem. And hey, if you haven't started your lock journey already and that's why you're initially watching this video, go ahead and click on this video right here. That way you know what not to do and what to do, okay? Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you at the next video.